Hello and welcome to the show. Now, if you're a fan of woodworking, you'll recognise this face.
Hi, John.
Hello, Alan. It's Alan Holtham, woodworking journalist. Alan's been on the show before doing some wood turning, and mightily impressive you were, I have to say,
there we go.
Alan.
There we go.
So it would be a great idea to get him back. I phoned him up. I said, Al, I want you to come and impress us with some more turning, but I want something made from oak.
There we are,
And
our
this is
garden
it.
bench.
You've done a brilliant job on this,
With turn legs again.
With turn
Had
legs.
to do a bit more turning.
So I think what we should do is head off back to the workshop and we'll show you how it's made. Well, as you can see, on the bench we have our chosen timber, which is a nice big slab of sawn oak, Al. It's a big old piece, isn't it?
It's a good piece, isn't it? Yeah, good size and big hefty piece.
Now, of course, we're going to rip this down and prepare it ourselves because we have the tools in the shop to do that. But if you haven't got the tools at home, then you can timber merchant.
Timber merchant will prepare it for you to a cutting list usually, yes.
Yeah. A little bit more expensive doing it that way, but there you go.
Not so much fun.
No. So what's our first job? What are we going to do?
The first job, John, is to mark out roughly where the main components are going to be. I've made a little template here of the back leg.
Right.
We can just lay it on and work around all the knot holes and splits. They're all characteristic of a piece of timber like this.
Yep.
Thick timber is usually cracked and split, so we can work around those with the template, mark out roughly where they're going to come to, then we can slice the board down to make it into a more manageable piece.
Yeah.
It's far too heavy on you.
Far too heavy, isn't it, trying to manoeuvre that? Okay, so I'll let you just make those marks, Al.
We can get one in there, I think.
Yeah.
So if we come to about there somewhere, I can work around that knot there. Leave a little bit clear on the end, because it's always split on the end, the timbers are. I'll just mark roughly there. And now I know I can slice down there.
Right. And you get two legs out of that?
You get two legs out of that.
Okay. And we're going to rip this down over on the table saw?
Oh, no. We'll do this on the...
By hand?
No, we'll do this on the bandsaw. It's much easier on the bandsaw.
Really?
And much safer, yes.
Really? So bandsaw can quite happily... Because what's that? That's about 3 inches
It's
thick.
3 inch thick timber,
So
yes.
it'll slice through that?
Yes, that bandsaw will cope with that quite happily, yes.
Okay, and have you... What about the blade then? Is it a particular blade?
I fixed a 5/8 wide blade on this.
Right.
If you're doing straight cuts, you're much better with a wide blade, a coarse tooth blade.
Yeah.
When you start cutting profiles, which we're going to later, we can go to a narrower blade, a finer blade.
Okay.
Much safer and easier than the super saw.
Yeah. And that went through that, no problem at all.
No.
I have to say I'm really impressed with the bandsaw. And it's not a very big bandsaw, is it?
No, this is quite a small one as bandsaws go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna rip through again?
No, we're plain and thickness this now. We'll get it down to a useful size.
Right, okay, we'll pop that over there. Okay, so our next port of call is going to be over at the plane thicknesser. Well, here we are at the plane thicknesser. Great piece of kit, Al.
Very nice.
Needs to be treated with utmost respect.
Of course, yes.
We are showing quite a lot of cutter here as well, aren't we? Because of the width of the piece of timber. So from a safety point of view, how do you deal with that?
We always need to keep this bridge guard up as close as possible to the work all the time.
Yeah.
And the other important thing always is never to pass your hand over the cutters. Arrange it so that your hand goes along that side, and then as the timber passes through, your hand is that side of the cutters.
Away.
Never actually pass it over the cutter block itself.
Yeah. Okay, and do you wear safety specs?
I always wear safety specs on the planer, yeah.
Okay.
There's always a danger when you come to the end of the piece of wood, as it passes over the cutters, little chips can come off this end and they're thrown up at you in your face.
Right.
So I would always wear safety glasses.
Well, there you have one face, nice and flat and true, and what we need to do now is get it to the correct thickness. As you can see, we've converted the machine into its thicknessing mode. We've brought the bed up to pretty much the right size that we want, and Al's just going to make a few passes through the thicknesser. Well, we're back at the bench, as you can see, with our piece of oak, which is now prepared, and also we've trimmed it down to length. Yeah. Next job, Al?
Next job is to mark out the actual size of the components.
Right.
And for this, again, we're going to use our template. Yeah. We're going to mark it accurately this time, and then cut them out again on the bandsaw.
Okay. Just on that template, I noticed you made it out of a piece of kind of melamine face hardboard. Yeah, yeah. Better than paper?
Yes, much better. It doesn't wrinkle up, and you can draw around it as well without it creasing.
Okay. So we're going to mark that out.
Yeah, we just look carefully at the timber before you actually mark it out. Make sure there's no cracks in the end. There's always something there usually. And also avoid any sapwood if you can. This will rot when it goes outside. Right. So try and keep in the heartwood. So we can see, okay, there. Just draw around that. You can see, because it's rigid, much easier. Draw around it much easier than the cardboard or a paper template. Okay. That's one. Just leave a little gap between them. A bit of clearance on the end. And there we go.
Great. Now back to the bandsaw.
Back to the bandsaw.
For some accurate cutting.
Cut it accurately, yes. Right. Same blade, same procedure.
Here we are, back at the planer thicknesser with our legs now. Al's just cut these, as you saw, on the bandsaw, which leaves us some blade marks, which we need to get rid of.
Bandsaw, yes.
And the tool for that, again, is going to be the planer. But we can only do the back part of the leg with that, can't we, Al? So we're going to use something else for the inside face, which we'll show you in just a second. And we're going to do that right now. Well, I say we. Of course, that is a royal we. Alan's going to do it.
I do all the work.
You do all the work, and I just get all the glory for it. That's how it works, isn't it? Well, the planer makes a nice job of cleaning up that face there, Al, but because it's a different matter when we get onto the inside face, you're not going to be able to do that on the planer. We're actually going to use the bobbin sander for that, but if somebody hasn't got a bobbin sander in their workshop, Al, how could they clean this face up?
There's a couple of options really. They're both pretty hard work though. You can use a hand plane to a certain extent. Obviously you can't get right into the corner. You just have to then finish that by hand, or you can use a hand sander, an orbital sander. Or
so if you had a spoke shave, you could get into there, or
a fine rasp or something like that.
And then clean it with a sander.
Yes. There's no easy way of doing these internal corners.
No. Well, there is if you've got one of these.
Well, this helps.
And, you know, the more observant amongst you will have noticed that Al's been doing all the work up to now, so he's now down tools and it's down to me to do this.
That's right, see if you can do that one.
I'm going to get on with this, okay. Well, there you go, Al.
Yeah, pretty good.
Big Bob makes a good job of that.
It takes a lot of hard work.
It certainly does, okay. So what is our next job?
The next job is cutting the mortises.
Okay, in these legs and the straight legs
the front legs, yes.
Front legs, okay. And we're going to do that on the other side of the shop on our dedicated mortiser. As you can see, we've got the leg clamped into our dedicated mortising machine. Nice bit of kit, these, very simple. Basically, you have a square hollow chisel with an auger bit running through the middle, and the auger bit clears out all the waste, and the chisel cuts you a nice square mortise. Other ways you could do it, if you haven't got one of these, you could use your router, of course.
Yes, or a standard drill press with a sawtooth bit or a flat bit. Just to remove the bulk of the waste and then chisel the rest out by hand.
Oh, sounds like hard work.
It is hard work, yes. Particularly with the number we've got to do.
How many have we got to do?
There's 36 altogether.
36 mortises. You wouldn't want to be cutting those by hand.
No, definitely not.
So that's 18 each.
That's right.
Maths,
that's right. Yes, so you better get busy.
Okay, I'm going to go first then. Okay, so we're all set and ready to go. So let's cut mortises out.
On you go, John.
Well, that's the last of our mortises cut in the legs. We've still got quite a lot to do in the back, Al.
We're not finished yet.
There's a whole bulk there. Whilst we're doing that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, all the mortises will have been cut, and we're going to do something very exciting, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to have some fun with some wood turning.
Yeah, we're going to do some turning on the lathe. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, we're well on with our garden bench, which is being made by Alan and a little bit by me. And we're using this fantastic English oak.
English oak, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Good old wood. Are we going to finish it at some point today?
Yes, we will.
We are going to put a finish on it. But now we're at the very exciting stage because we're going to start turning the legs, aren't we?
It's going to be fun.
The front legs.
Yes, front legs only.
Nice shape. So just talk us through what we're going to be doing now.
Right, the first stage, John, obviously mount the timber in the lathe. Already marked for the 4-prong centre on the end.
Right.
So that just slips in the lathe. Make sure it goes in the location marks. Bring the tailstock up, tighten it up. Revolving centre here so it won't burn the work.
Yep.
Get nice and secure. Lock up the tailstock barrel. We're nearly ready to go.
Okay, and what's the first thing you need to think about once the timber's
Well, you've got to think
like
safety at this stage. Before you switch the lathe on, think safety. Make sure the tool rest is nice and secure. There's no danger it's spinning into the work as it's going round, otherwise the wood can climb out at you. Make sure that's tight. Just spin the work by hand. Make sure it is clear of the tool rest. We're ready to go.
Brilliant. Right, okay, well let's
That's
get
the first
turning,
stage.
shall we?
Don't forget your safety goggles.
Safety goggles,
yeah. It's always important on the lathe.
Okay.
See, also I'm using my finger as a guide along the tool rest
to
get me a nice parallel cut. Working up against that shoulder. I have to be a little bit careful here, working up that shoulder.
Right.
Make sure I don't tap. Again, tap an unsupported portion of the tool edge, which could tap and dig in. Now if you stop the lathe now and have a look, you can see this should be nice and cylindrical with the squares still intact on the ends. A little bit of cleaning up to do still.
Yeah.
See here, a little bit of cleaning up, but you can see the principle.
Right.
Nice and round there, still got the nice square corners.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to leave you for a little bit while you turn that top
I do the work
part
again.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought you might.
One sugar?
Yes, please. And that's the roughing out stage completed. Stop the lathe and have a look, make sure everything's all right before we go any further. It's a really good tip here. If you want to make the detail really stand out, just incise a line at every point where the detail changes, just with the corner of the screw chisel, just a fine line like that, just makes it stand out, makes it look much crisper.
Well, as you can see, Alan's finished one of our legs, but we do need two of these. So how do you make sure that they're both the same?
Well, we've got to match exactly, of course, obviously. For this we use calipers and dividers. There's a pair of dividers and a pair of calipers. We just mark off the main dimensions. I can set the dividers like that. That gives me the width of that little ball.
Yep.
And I use the calipers in the same way. Just set down to that shoulder. They just pass over. Right. I can now just transfer those measurements to the next leg. Okay. It's surprising, as long as the main dimensions are exactly the same, surprising how different the bit in between can be, and it still looks all right. Oh, really? And don't forget, of course, they're 4 foot apart on the finished bench.
Yeah. Well, here is one end of our garden bench. Alan's just knocking it together loose. You made a lovely job of these legs, Al.
Yeah, sanded really up quite well. I sanded them while I was still on the lathe, so it takes all the hard work out of it.
That's the trick to it, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And as you can see with these two rails, this one's straight at the bottom, this one's got a nice scallop taken out of it, done on the bandsaw, of course, and cleaned up on the bobbin sander. Next job we need to do is to replicate that for the other end, and we need to cut some tenons.
Tenons on the end of the rails, yes.
You could use your router, of course, but you'll never guess what tool Alan's going to use.
Got to be the bandsaw, John. It's got to be the bandsaw.
It's got to be the bandsaw. Okay, Al, just explain how you cut your tenons.
All I've done, John, is marked out the first one. I only need to mark one. I set up a little simple stop block here as a tending stock. Some bandsaws actually have that fitted on the machine. If you don't, a simple block of wood, a little clamp, that's set up as a tending stock. I push the wood through until it hits the stop. I know the shoulders are dead to length then. Just turn the wood over and repeat the procedure.
Okay.
Very, very simple way of cutting tenons.
Okay, let's cut some cheeks then.
Okay, John, that's the long cut done. Obviously now we've got to cut the shoulder itself. For this you normally use a mitre guide on the bandsaw. You obviously can't seem to find yours. Don't know what you've done with it. I think you've tied it away somewhere. It doesn't matter. If you've got a bandsaw, no mitre guide, make yourself a very simple one. A square block of wood. Just make sure this angle is a true 90 degrees. That's all you need. Then, very, very simple. Run this side up against the fence. Hold your wood firmly against the other one. You'll get a true 90-degree cut, and we can now cut the shoulders.
Well, that's all the tenons cut, 36 in all, to go with our 36
that, wasn't it?
Yes. Next job is to make another one of these, which is the armrest, which of course goes on the end of our bench. Now, obviously, you're going to cut this on the bandsaw, but I've noticed out at this end, it's actually round. So
yes, I've actually turned this on the lathe. I've mounted the whole armrest between centres like that.
Right.
A little bit hairy, not too bad. And turn the joint on there. Much easier to fit into the back upright on the end.
Of course, but first job is to just actually cut the basic shape.
Yeah, I've drawn around that one to give us a template. It's just a question of cutting it out now. But you will notice I've changed the blade on the bandsaw.
Oh, right.
Before I was using a wide one, a 5/8 wide one for straight cuts. Now, because we've got to do some quite tight profiles, I've gone down to a 3/8 wide blade. That'll allow me to get around the curves.
Here are all the component parts for our garden bench, but before we can put it together, a couple of jobs we need to do, don't we, Al?
Yeah.
The first one is to take off all these sharp edges, all these arises, and the way we're going to do that is to use the router. Alan's already fitted a rounding over bit into that, and that will knock all of those off for us. And what we've actually done is set up a bit of a production line here, haven't we, to be honest? So Alan's going to be at this end of the bench, taking all those sharp edges off, and I'm going to be at this end of the bench with the sander and giving it a good clean up before we assemble it. And it's always a good idea to clean stuff up, to give it a good sanding before you assemble it. It makes life a whole lot easier. So are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go, John.
Right, I will be at this end. You router away at that end. I'm going to put on a dust mask because I've got the dusty end, and Alan's wearing his safety specs because he's using the router at that end. Okay, we're ready for some assembly now. All our parts have been sanded. The glue we're using for this job is this 1-part polyurethane. It's excellent, isn't it?
It's ideal for an outside job like this, yeah.
But we are wearing rubber gloves because it can be an irritant. And also it is very messy as well. It's very sticky, as you'd expect, funnily enough.
Yes, for a glue. Yes, yeah.
What it also does as well is once it dries, it expands. So what we tend to do is to let it dry first and then clean it off afterwards. It comes up like a foam and you can trim it off with a knife.
It fills the gaps as well, John.
It does fill the gaps. We won't be needing that, obviously, with Alan's project, but when I'm doing anything, I use a lot of it. So it's a very good adhesive. We've got our production line going again. I'm going to be at this end.
On the easy bit.
Putting the glue on. Yes, I've got the long straw once again. And Al's going to be at that end doing the assembly. Well, there is the bench, on the bench, out of the clamps, looking very impressive, I have to say, Alan.
It's looking good, isn't it?
It's a lovely job.
Yeah.
And next job is what?
We've got to fix the slats, the seat slats in place. So I've made up a little jig. I'm going to counterbore the holes and then plug them afterwards.
So we're going to screw them?
We're going to screw them, yes.
And I'm going to cut the plugs for the holes. Got the plug cutter set up in the drill press and a little bit of scrap oak, and it's going to be easier. Alan's done a great job of getting all the little plugs in. He's also used brass screws. We want to make that quite clear. And if you are using brass screws going into hardwood like this, it's always a good idea to go in first with a steel screw, then take that out and then put the brass screw in, because the brass screws are soft and they can just shear off, which is really frustrating. Now all I need to do is to flush these off, and the way I'm going to do that, you can use a chisel, but I like to use my little Japanese saw. It is in all its splendid glory, our finished bench. Alan, you've done a brilliant job on that.
It's worked out well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's worked out really well. And do you know, I don't think I'm going to put any finish on it.
Just going to leave it natural.
I'm going to leave it because oak will go that lovely grey colour, won't it? That silver grey colour.
Put it outside, it does. Yes. Yeah. Weathers nicely.
And well done, excellent.
Well, just before you take it outside, John, while you were standing away, I've been back on the lathe, cut myself in shavings again, made you a couple of little finishing touches to go on the top of the
brilliant.
The back row.
I wonder what you were doing, beavering away over there.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
just
we'll
finish the job off.
Drill a couple of holes and we'll stick those in.
Yep.
You know, Alan, this is going to look lovely when it's weathered in.
Yeah, it just takes about 12 months out in this weather and it'll soon go that lovely silver grey.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you for today.
Pleasure.
It's been great again, very informative.
Okay.
And I hope that Alan has inspired you to go and get a lathe and have a go, as you say, basically.
It's very easy.
It's not that difficult.
Nope.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you again soon.